Dear colleagues, good afternoon from me as well. My name is Alexander Kotsev. I work for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I have the privilege to say a few words and to open the interesting workshop that is ahead of us. Let me give you a little bit of a context. Together, today we are discussing the data ecosystems for geospatial data study that is being implemented within the context of the ELISE ISA² action. The project started in January 2020. It is performed by the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology, LIST, but we have been working very close together with the colleagues from LIST from the very beginning. What is the objective? The objective of the study is to identify and analyze a set of successful data ecosystems and to learn from those ecosystems to come up with actionable recommendations that can help us in the transition from the spatial data infrastructures thinking that we all know very well, and to align what we have in spatial data infrastructures to within the context of the newly launched European strategy for data. So really we approached the problem of this transition through looking into existing ecosystems for things that work. We didn't want to invent everything ourselves. And today I have the pleasure that to mention that we have come a long way after many iterations, after a very sophisticated, scientifically sound process that will be presented a little bit later. We have now the opportunity to share the study results, and we look forward to a lively debate and your feedback. So thanks a lot to all the colleagues who joined. Thanks a lot also to our distinguished panelists who will be introduced a little bit later. A few words before we dive into the details about the ELISE action. ELISE is one of the 54 different actions that are put in place by the ISA² program with the overall objective of improving interoperability. So all the ISA² actions approach the problem of interoperability from a different angle. And ELISE is the action. It is actually unique because of the fact that it is focusing explicitly on interoperability of location data. So the location dimension is the leading one. And what ELISE does is it looks at different aspects related to cross-border, but also cross-domain interoperability solutions with the idea to support e-government activities, to support public administrations, but also to improve the interrelation between the public sector, businesses, and citizens. That said, I would like now to give the floor to Slim and the colleagues from the Luxembourg Institute for Science and Technology to introduce the study. So please, colleagues.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. Thank you all for joining. My name is Slim Turki, and I am happy to run this study with my colleagues Sébastien, Martin, and Prune Gautier. Three of us are from the Luxembourg Institute of Science and Technology. It's a research and technology organization addressing digital innovation, environment, and materials innovation. Our main topic of research in our team is open data release and reuse and data ecosystems. Today, and during this session, we will start by presenting the study approach. Then we will have a panel representing the diversity of the data ecosystem stakeholders to discuss the recommendation, followed by a summary focusing on insights for the evolution of spatial data infrastructure, SDIs. The floor then will be open for the interactive sessions. Let's start with the approach. So the approach was empirical by principle and relied on the identification and analysis of existing data ecosystems. A subset of them, 5, were then selected for in-depth analysis, and all the selected and not selected data ecosystem analyzed contributed to the development of the recommendation presented today. So the 5 ecosystems selected are, the first one is the local data ecosystem, is illustrated by the case of Rennes Métropole and its initiative called RUDI, Rennes Urban Data Interface. So Rennes is implementing since 2016 a collaborative and partnership-based local data strategy, targeting an inclusive and sustainable governance model for the local ecosystem and adopting the quadruple helix model. Rennes is also experimenting the concept of the city as trusted third party, allowing citizens to take back control over their personal data. The second ecosystem is the Geospatial data marketplace and is illustrated by App42. App42 is a marketplace and developer platform providing access to both data and analytics from different sources. App42 is also offering a value distribution model that is contributing to changing the way geospatial data is accessed and analyzed. The third ecosystem addresses tracking technologies for supply chain and is illustrated by SPIRE. SPIRE builds and manages a constellation of nanosatellites, collecting and distributing Earth observation data, maritime data using IIS messages, aviation data using ADS-B data, and weather data using radio occultation. Smart agriculture is illustrated by api-agro. Api-agro is a business-to-business data exchange platform operated by AgData Hub and a company of up to 30 partners representing the agriculture sector, from private companies and public sector bodies as like chambers of agriculture, technical agriculture institutes. It provides a functional, technical, commercial, and legal framework for data exchange between the various stakeholders. Last and not least, the disaster management ecosystem is illustrated through 2 use cases. First, the Brussels Emergency Services Data Sharing Platform and the Danish Common Data on Topography, Climate, and Water project preparing the country for climate change scenarios. By integrating the 2 use cases, we were able, we cover the emergency management phases from mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And also we highlight the importance of considering at the same time the 2 time dimension, real-time, historical, and simulation. So to analyze this ecosystem, we defined a modular analysis framework built of 3 layers. The first one is the ecosystem summary, giving an overall representation of the ecosystem key aspects. The second is ecosystem value dynamics, and the third is ecosystem data flows. The desk research was completed by interviews with experts and stakeholders. For the second layer, so the ecosystem value dynamics, it illustrates the resources exchanged between the stakeholders and their value. For example, in the case shown in the slide, it's the case of Rennes. It helps to understand the structure of the ecosystem, who are the stakeholders engaged, how they are organized, how they collaborate between themselves, and what are the values exchanges. And it also helped us to trace in green on the schema, the green arrows, the impact of part of the project review called Call for Project, which and the impact of this initiative on the dynamization of the ecosystem. So these calls are open to all the community and offer facilitated access to data to stakeholders, coaching, and funding. Then the ecosystem data flows represent the ecosystem from the perspective of data. And these flows are good proxies to evaluate the maturity and health of the ecosystem. In the example here, we see it's an example from App42, the Geospatial data marketplace example, when we can see data from Sentinel or Pleiades and Copernicus and general data are combined with commercial data to be exposed on the data marketplace. These data are available for distribution to intermediaries like the company LiveEO that will participate in the panel also, and that is the access of LiveEO to these specific data sets and also to processing blocks allowing the company to offer data infrastructure management services to the Deutsche Bahn. This activity also, in return, could generate new services that could be made available on the platform. This is what I had to say about the method and the framework. I give the floor to Prune for the panel.
So, I'm pleased to moderate this panel today and very thankful for the participation of our panelists. So, dear panelists, let me introduce you and please turn your cam on so everybody can see you. So there is woman first, Marion Glatron, which is Smart City and Innovation Director at Rennes Métropole. There is also Simon Saint-Georges, which is the Rudy, let's say, Project Manager at Rennes Métropole. We also have Sean Wiid, which is the CEO at Up42. Daniel Seidel, which is the co-founder of LiveEO. But also Dan Isaac, the Business Development Executive at SPIRE. Théo-Paul Haezebrouck, which is digital expert in agriculture in Data Hub. And to finish, Rink, public policy specialist at the National Geographic Institute of Belgium. So in order to, let's say, give a clear picture of the recommendation, we decided to divide them in category. And so we will start with the first category, which is governance. So let's say that the governance aims to arrange all the interaction and exchanging within the ecosystem. And the orchestration role is crucial in the ecosystem thinking, but we can always wonder if the choice of an orchestrator is obvious or forever or that kind of question. So I would like to ask Sean from Up42 for first question. Could you please explain us how you reached the position of orchestrator in your data and more marketplace? So if you can answer that, please.
Sure, of course. Hi everyone, and thanks for having me, Slim and Prune. Okay, so Up42 was created because Airbus basically recognized the need in the market for a platform that was able to get access to a wide range of open data and commercial data, as well as provide the easy access to algorithms and infrastructure. And the reason that that this is such an important aspect of opening up our industry is that right now there's still so many technical and commercial barriers in place that is stopping the longer term and broader adoption of Earth observation data and analytics. So as we started building out this platform and reaching out to industry experts, reaching out to data owners or data providers, reaching out to people who are building algorithms, we started to find out more and more about what such a marketplace would look like. What became very clear at some point was that although we aspire to be, and we are an open marketplace and neutral across all players, there is still a role for us to play in terms of making sure that at least there's more or less a fair and transparent playing ground for everyone. So that involves a couple of different things. It involves making sure that everyone has got the right level of feedback about what's happening on the platform, what kind of use cases our customers are interested in, what kind of traction we're seeing, and this is about us, helping to match the usage, the supply, or rather the demand from the customer side with the supply on our partner side. One thing that we need to be careful of, though, is that we wouldn't necessarily describe ourselves as governing the ecosystem, more like a nexus point where it's all coming together. And the important thing is that for our partners, and this is really critical, is that we're not governing anything as it pertains to the price of our partners' products or their terms and conditions, etc. It's important that our partners still maintain ownership of their IP and of their products.
All right, thanks a lot. And you are highlighting a point that we call the role of orchestrator, because it's not to govern, it's just to orchestrate all the action without governing, let's say. So I would have the same question for Marion, but in the particular focus of a local ecosystem, let's say a local public ecosystem. Could you please illustrate the role of the orchestrator of a smart city, please, Marion?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for inviting us at this roundtable. Well, as a local public actor, we have a lot of different types of roles, which are, let's say, traditional. We have internal management, public procurement, we can enact rules, and we can also build partnerships. For the local data ecosystem, I think we have to mix all those types of tools, with a particular difficulty is that there is no official competence or role which is defined by a legal frame, and there is a sort of a competition in this field with a multiplicity of initiatives. I don't mean competition as a war between different actors, but more this multiplicity of initiatives. Everybody thinks that he's well entitled to lead an initiative in the field of bettering the management of data and in his own field, whereas a thematical field or a local field. And in what regards the action of a public actor, as we are, Rennes Métropole is the city and 42 cities around the mother city Rennes. And this role of orchestration is made of leadership on programs and projects. We propose some programs. For instance, this is what we initiated in 2010 with the Open Data Program, which involved at the time also some partners of the territory, and not only the public actor itself, for instance, in the field of culture. But we did it again, let me have this expression. We did it again in 2016 with the initiation of a local public service for data. And this local public service for data, initiated in 2016, led to the proposition of a platform, a local platform for data sharing named Rudy. And this leadership is the first thing that we can design as a tool of the public actor. But the second one is to really to build partnership and to build them in the long term. And this is what is more difficult and more challenging, maybe, because we don't have the competence. We can't just lay on a competence which would be okay. The public local actor is entitled for leading a data sharing policy on its territory. This is not the case. So we have to invent, and we have to be very subtle in the way we invent this policy. And maybe just to end on this first question, maybe I think that we work on the idea that this public policy has a lot of people, of type of institutions which have to intervene and to be active in this part. But I think that the role of the public actor will remain important after the emergent stage of the project of building a platform for data sharing. And because what is at stake is inventing a new public policy concerning the ownership, the uses, the sharing, and the exploitation of data at a local scale. And I think it will take a lot of time, and we have to be very, let's say, opportunistic about this, and leverage on the good opportunities that come to build these partnerships and to make something out of them in order to be more intelligent in the future. Is that clear enough, Prune?
All right. So sorry. So thanks a lot, Marion. And now, since we are talking about arranging all the stakeholder and exchanging and how to make that like be full of forces, I would like to ask a question for Rink about the coordination of actors, because I think that in Brussels, you're working with several data providers that are not coordinated. So could you share your experience on this point, please, Rink?
Yes, thank you very much, Prune. I'm working at the National Mapping Agency, and I work with the emergency services in Belgium. And they are very diverse stakeholders who all have their own important interest, which means the firefighters, the police, the medical emergencies, defense, civil protection, the crisis centers. And they are all king in their own kingdom, but they need to collaborate in times of crisis, and that remains quite difficult. They all work in their own silo, and within their silo, again, in smaller silos. They're collecting and defining their own data and map information, and which means that they do a lot of double work, a bad quality of data, and it's also impossible for them to share relevant information quickly because of interoperability issues. And additionally, the data providers, Belgium has been regionalized a lot, so data providers are spread everywhere at the regional level, local level, national level, and they're also fighting each other sometimes. So there have been some visionary emergency workers. They were asking for decades for a good map to start collaborate, and so that's why we started with the program Uniform and Shared Cartography for the emergency service. And we were asked because we are, as mapping agency, a neutral actor and stand above the parties. And the good thing as well is that there is a sense of urgency with climate change, increasing wildfires. Also in Brussels, there are lots of important international events with sometimes 60 heads of state attending a NATO summit. So there's a very demand-driven projects, and we are coordinating this, in fact, this collaboration of emergency workers. We started with small projects for wildfire and for the NATO summit, but they all demonstrate the power of location and also the power of participation. We let the users, in fact, participate in the design of the solution. And which also means that all different stakeholders need to collaborate and be more open. And became imminent that an umbrella approach is much stronger than arrogant soloists. However, funding is difficult to find, as it goes above the heads of the individual disciplines, and there's we still struggle to find funding to develop a platform for everyone. But on the short time and also on the long run, I think a central catalyst will be and is necessary. So I think the incentives is just to start with projects and have also a strategy and vision for the long run, but start and develop with small steps so that your developments are also agile and relatively easily adaptable, and everybody still understands what's going on. So this was about what I wanted to tell you. I hope this answers your questions.
Yes, of course. Thanks a lot, Rink.
Yeah.
I would like now to address the topic of the diversity and the differences between the actor of an ecosystem. And for that, I would like to ask, yes, Théo-Paul, in the smart agriculture ecosystem as orchestrator, how do you achieve to articulate all the diverse actors of your ecosystem that are very different goals, means, objective?
Sure. Thank you for inviting us. So my name is Théo-Paul. I'm part of the Ag Data Hub team, and I'm in charge of product. And we have a platform. Its name is api-agro, and it started in 2014, so 6 years ago already. It was first a research project funded by the Ministry of Agriculture, and with the goal was to bring applied research in agriculture to better exchange data between the different stakeholders. We had a 2 years project when we spend most of our time doing pedagogy, explaining what is data exchange, what are the good way, the new technologies with API to exchange data. And we spend more time about data governance and pedagogy, saying, okay, you keep the use of data, you stay master of the use of the data, just here to expose and favor discoverability of the data, and how we can support all the providers in having a framework for the data about legal, business, technical, functional aspects. So based on this 2 years project experience, there was a big project named AGGate, with the goal was to define what would be a portal of data for the agricultural sectors. And we support a lot this initiative, and based on of the conclusion of this report, the main conclusion was it's to the agricultural stakeholders to make their own portal. It's not the government to do so, and that's why the whole agricultural sectors gather on the api-agro company and AgData company now together and define a common framework, a common governance, including public actors, private actors, from the fundamental research, applied research, but all the startups ecosystem, also the main software editors, to see how we can decide together about common rules that would be the same for everyone in having a common platform for exchanging data in the agricultural sector. And that's what we have done in the last years, building this common governance and also building tools that could support all the digitalization of the agriculture in France.
Thanks a lot, Théo-Paul. So that's all for the governance question. And now we will go to the stakeholders engagement recommendation, since we thought in governance issues that stakeholders engagement is a huge topic. So because the risk linked to the stakeholder engagement is that if you don't have enough stakeholder in your ecosystem, there are not enough data that are traveling, and so you do not have a sustainable ecosystem. So when we talk about, let's say, the critical mass, I just think about the marketplace. So my first question will be for Sean. So Sean, in your marketplace, how do you proceed to engage and motivate all the stakeholders to participate?
Hi, yeah, it's a really important question. It's a really important part of our the key work that we're doing right now. As you mentioned already, we were operating a two-sided marketplace, which benefits from network effects at scale. And if we don't get to that level of scale, then we're obviously not going to have a sustainable ecosystem. So the key thing for us is to be able to grow both sides of this equation at the same time. And obviously that's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. What we've settled on to start with is that we think that the main thing that we need to focus on is growing our data providers first, and our partnerships on the data side first, and then building on top of that the algorithm providers and sort of in a little bit sort of lagging, but also in parallel, while at the same time then attracting more and more of the customers. The challenge is, of course, is that when you're talking about engaging with suppliers, obviously what they're wanting to see is a return on putting their data, putting their algorithms on the platform relatively soon. So, what we do is in terms of engagement and motivation, we have two different mechanisms. The one mechanism is we have a revenue share model in place where we're making sure that for every single usage of either a data source or an algorithm, there's a fair revenue share flowing directly to the provider. And the second thing, of course, when we're starting from scratch and we're not necessarily having a clear view on how that data source is going to be monetized in the near future, then two things happen. The one thing is we may move more into a reseller model where there's a little bit of an upfront commitment upfront to incentivize the data providers to come on board. We also take a lot of the integration efforts of the data source into our platform on board ourselves so that there's no unknown R&D costs from the data provider side. And then the next thing we do is we make sure that we take the responsibility for communicating the value of that data source, the value of that algorithm, the use case that it can solve out into the market so that we're able to help to attract customers and attract users of that data source. And this sort of co-marketing effort that we're doing together with our partners, either for specific verticals or for specific data sources, we're already starting to see that's motivating on both sides of the equation, both on the customer side as well as on the supply side.
Thanks a lot, Sean. And now that we are talking about value, I would like to go in the particular focus of always the local ecosystem with a question for Simon. Could you elaborate on how you intend to strengthen the links between the stakeholder of your ecosystem, including citizens that are a huge ecosystem, a huge actor of your ecosystem, please?
Yes. Thank you for inviting us again. I am Simon Saint-Georges and I am in charge of the RUDI project, which is a European project where we try to build a platform, a portal to share data with all stakeholders of the city and all of the territory. So I think what Sean just said was really a big part of the answer actually, and it was really interesting. But what we have been doing, which is probably more specific to our local ecosystem, is some kind of animation and some tools and ideas to make the ecosystem more alive. And so what we try to do, what we have been doing with success, and we plan to do again in RUDI, is create events. Local events where we create some time and space for collaboration between the stakeholders. So these are dedicated events where we invite all the local stakeholders. So our stakeholders are they are public actors, but also private companies, academics, and of course the word that everyone has in their mouth right now is the citizens. And this is a dedicated challenge. But we have been organizing really interesting events where they all gather during one day, and we exchange, and we have some more conference type sessions and more other workshops where we work on specific topics that these stakeholders can have. And what we try to do is stimulate the collaboration between them. And we have been seeing that this works well, and this makes it possible for these different stakeholders to meet and sometimes more understand how the others work and what they are expecting. And we think that this will be really a good, yes, we make more project possible and more interesting ideas come. And so this is for there's time and space for collaboration. And what we want to do also is to create tools. And so as I said, we are working on a platform, but we want this platform to be not only a technical framework, but also a framework for community and collaboration again. So we want to make it possible not only to access and share data, but also to exchange on topics, on projects, and maybe people that can look for new partners or specific skills that are needed for the project. And we want all this to be done in the framework of the platform that we are creating right now. So it's of course a challenge, but we sometimes call it a data social network. We will see in the future if it's just a catchphrase or if it actually works. And yeah, there are two types of stakeholders that are really a challenge for us. One is the data providers, and as Sean said, we need to work on the value and how we can make them interested in working with us, and that's a topic on its own. And of course, the citizens that are probably sometimes interested in these topics, but from another point of view, and we need to make it accessible for them. And so that's what we are working on right now. And this platform and these events should help us to work on this.
Thanks a lot. So to conclude on the stakeholder engagement topic, I would like to give the floor to Dan Isaac from SPIRE, because his experience is kind of fairy tale, let's say. So Dan, could you please explain us how you took advantage of an important regulation, the regulation about AIS messages, in the logistic and tracking ecosystem to build your ecosystem, please?
Yes, and again, thank you to the organizers for inviting me to this workshop. I'm very, very grateful. So SPIRE was created in 2012 with the idea that that we could use space in order to gather valuable information about the world. And in addition to that, we felt that the use of CubeSat technology could small nanosatellite technology could allow us to create value-added products at a much lower cost point or price point to the customer than what was being offered in the market at that date. So we looked at what could be done using a nanosatellite, and nanosatellites are ideally suited for reception of passive signals. And obviously, the transmission of AIS data is something that can be received passively by a small satellite and processed, and you can extract valuable information from that data. Now, as you well said, the International Maritime Organization, throughout its history, has tried to create new ways to improve the safety of vessels at sea, and this is one of the reasons why the AIS protocol was created, so that vessels could identify each other as they navigate in as automatic a way as possible. And we decided why not just receive these messages like any other station on the ground, but from space. Why not receive these messages and see what we can do and how we can extract value from that. So we developed the technology and we launched the satellites, and now we're gathering data from pretty much the world's fleet and processing that data and generating value-added products from that. Now, even though the AIS protocol is mandated for vessels of a certain size, it was originally conceived to improve safety and for vessels to kind of share information so that they know that where each other is and they don't collide with each other. However, obviously, when the AIS protocol was created, the creators did not really foresee that other companies would generate value-added products based on that data. Kind of similar in a way to when GPS was first created. Nobody could imagine that GPS would be used pretty much by anybody in the world in order to generate all kinds of products and services beyond just tracking a moving object. So now, because the AIS protocol was not created specifically to support these value-added service providers, there are certain elements of the data which let's say are dirty. You know, the vessel, the captains of a vessel, they input data in a certain way. They forget to add certain fields, or they use the fields in a way that were not supposed to be used. So we need to invest a lot of effort to clean that data, to make sure that data that we receive is actually correct or accurate as possible, and in order to then create the products that we need to then deliver to our customers. So I think there is an important effort from all parts of the value chain to ensure that the data that is originated in the first place is as accurate and clean as possible, so that all actors and all stakeholders in the chain can then extract maximum value from it, whether it's for safety applications or to create value-added products and services at the end of the chain.
All right, thank you, Dan. And you helped me to do the switch for the next category, which is technical issue recommendation. Thank you. And the next question is going to be for you again. You're the winner. And it is the next one. Beyond data, what are the components that are needed for a successful ecosystem, do you think?
Yeah, so again, on the example of AIS, okay, our satellites also collect all kinds of other data, but I think the example of AIS can be used also for the other sources of data. So the data that we collect and we package and we clean and we prepare, it has no value if it doesn't reach the customer. So in order for that data to reach the customer, we need many different elements in the chain, not just on our side, but on other parts of the provider. So we rely very heavily on the use of cloud services in order, number one, to store the data in a secure manner and in a way that can be stored forever, in order to process that data and generate the right levels of products, without having to invest a huge amount of money into creating our own server farms and infrastructure. So for us, an important element of the change is definitely cloud service providers. You know, the usual suspects, of course, but they are a very important part of the overall chain. Not the only part, but a very important one. So the ability to use cloud infrastructure and cloud services to take that data, make it better, add value, and serve it to our customers is definitely an important aspect of the chain.
Thanks a lot. For the next question, I would like to ask Sean, in UP42, how do you manage to have data available on your marketplace and to make your platform active and usable and used, by the way?
Let me skip this. Right. So basically, there are a few elements to this, right? The first is how we get the data in, how we make sure that it can be used like within our platform. And then the last part of it is how we actually deliver that to the customers, right? The first thing is that, you know, we're not dealing with a single data source and we don't own any of the data. And if we think about even just Earth observation on its own, forget about the rest of geospatial data. There's so many different providers The archives are growing every single day by huge amounts of data. There is no way that a marketplace or a central point to access this data is able to copy and store a version of this data in a sustainable way. It's just not economically feasible. So UP42 operates a very decentralized architecture for the way we access the data. And a fundamental prerequisite for us is that we're able to access the data from our providers via API. And this API access to the provider's data is what allows us to keep the costs down on our side, but still provide more or less real-time access to the data that's available to our customers. The second, and this is what makes it actionable, right? We don't want to be a marketplace where you can see a list of data sources and push a button to contact sales. We want developers to be able to work with it immediately. The same thing applies then for algorithms. And here, going back to Dan's comments around standard cloud technology components, we make heavy use of things like Kubernetes and Docker to be able to ramp up the algorithms in parallel so that people can do a lot of processing of these algorithms. Again, this makes the data usable, it makes it actionable, it helps people to extract insights. And the final part, of course, is, it's not about the user interface. Of course, the user interface is important to help people learn about the platform and the marketplace and discover what's there. But in order for them to use it at scale, everything has got to be accessible and usable via APIs. And again, you'll hear this word APIs come up again and again and again. We are firm believers that APIs are what glue ecosystems together and enable ecosystems. You cannot have technology-driven ecosystems without a solid set of APIs at all connection points.
Thank you, Sean. For this technical aspect, I would like to also give the floor to a customer of one of the ecosystems we have in the study. And so I would like to ask Daniel Seidel from LiveEO, how do you find the access to geospatial data, and how do you figure your role within this ecosystem illustrated by UP42?
Yeah, thank you first of all for the invitation, and I really enjoyed the discussion you had. And Sean, we are now working together since 3 years, and you're always reading my mind. For us, API access is super important because it takes the human out of the equation, right? And as long as you don't have an API access, you can't build a fully scalable product. So for us, when we founded LiveEO, we don't want to do project-based business. We want to build scalable products. And I was actually super surprised that when we then wanted to buy data, that the traditional approach in the geospatial industry is that you write an email with your request, you put in an AOI, and then humans are taking this AOI, they clip the data for you, and then they ship it to you. And just imagine how much, so this is not scalable, and this is producing a lot of costs and is taking a lot of resources. So it's impossible with this to really build a scalable system. So that's why also for us, the APIs are super important. Because as Sean already said, also if you build a nice user interface on UP42 and other platforms, you still have a human there who has to do something. And now imagine you're building a scalable product like we are doing for the infrastructure domain. We want to have thousands of customers with the same product, just in a different geographical region. That's why we have to rely on this access.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, since we are on the technological side of the problem, let's say, I would like to talk a little bit about digital transformation, and the next question is for Théo-Paul. As the orchestrator of your ecosystem, how does api-agro, I said it the wrong way before, so how does api-agro perceive the digital transformation triggered by the use of your platform in the agricultural sector?
Thank you for the question. As it was told, API is core to access data and do automatization. If you want to favor the data exchange and data spreading, you have to have API. It's very core, and that's why it's in our name, API Agro, the API of the agronomy sector. So when in the beginning of the project, API was well known in the technical sectors, was not yet in all sector. I won't tell for the others, but it was like the beginning. We have some web services, but it was SOAP services. We won't go into technical details, but REST API are more easier to consume for someone that discover your data and your services. And when I told we did like 18 months of pedagogy, it was okay. We also made a state of art about data exchange in the agricultural sectors, and main of the exchanges was by files sent by email or FTP or things like that. And we have some web services, but very few among the whole data exchange. And okay, the name of the project is API, and we have so few in the project. So how we can support them, explain how API can help and support them about spreading data inside the company first, and then exchanging with the external companies, can be partners, can be clients. So we did a lot of pedagogy, and I think when we are talking about data exchange, it's very hard to find the right people, because you have, for example, for us, if you have a meeting, you have to need some technical guy, the guy from the agronomy also. You have to also have the support of the director, because when you have data exchange and the whole program of data exchange, API is a strategy you have to implement in your company to really transform your company and how they're working with others, or even inside between the different services. And when we are starting this project, it was really how we can foster and support all the ecosystem to leverage about the technical aspect. And we have tools for this, but more and more we had to do a lot of pedagogy. And now we are very happy that the main software editors have got API. We are taking to the next level now, but which is how we can check consent from the farmers between any data exchange by API. And API will be needed for automate all of this chain value to see, okay, I've got data, I check the consent, I can access to the consent, and I deliver the data.
Thanks a lot, Théo-Paul. And since you were talking about consent, and we are talking about data, what about talking about the personal data taboo? And for that, I will ask Marion from Rennes. How does Rennes intend to leverage the value of personal data through new extraction mechanism and new reuse? And do you have a solution to address this topic?
Okay, thank you, Prune. Well, this is a major issue, because we are not dealing with customers, and we are dealing with users of public services, but at the top of it, they are citizens. It means that they are political beings, they endorse political responsibility, and in a certain way, they participate in the very definition of the framework in which data, all data, but in particular personal data, can be legitimately used. And we are working inside the project Rudy, we are working on 3 levers. The first one is to make people understand what it is about. This is a pedagogical program, which includes data literacy, meetings, explanations towards different publics. Second lever is the construction, the building of trust around, of course, the data protection, but also the transparency. We plan, for instance, to present to every citizen the total personal data we own about him or her, And this is quite a huge program, and it's really committing. And to build trust, we also work on the anonymization process with scientists, because in the consortium we have, around the building of the platform for data sharing, we have scientists with us and specialists of this question of anonymization. The third levers we have is to create mechanisms to make it possible for individuals to consent to the use of their personal data in good conditions. And in that perspective, we work with a local partner, which is in Rennes, but he's part of the Earth Data Hub, which is a hub, a consortium for sharing Earth data. And this is the first part of my answer. This is we are really taking very seriously this aspect of the question. And maybe I hope that I saw there was, in the conversation, there was a question about that. What do citizens get out of this initiative? They get transparency, a better knowledge of what the public actor really has about personal data concerning each of the citizens. And what we hope, but maybe it's more a hope than anything else, we hope that citizens will agree to share their personal data for reuses for the benefit of projects which are for the general interest. And some of our partners, for instance, Enedis, or the distributor of gas, and this is the national distributor of electricity. We work with them inside the consortium building Wiid, but we work also with the national distributor of gas and the Earth Data Hub. These are three partners which I directly already committed in projects which are already experiencing and testing this type of solution for consent and reuse of personal data. And just to conclude this point, I would just want to share some idea with you. We speak of data trusts. We hear a lot about data trust, and I think this work we are experiencing in that consortium about how we really concretely day-to-day building the trust maybe just can be labeled as the building of a data trust on a local basis, and we'll see what the legal form it will take. And this work is just done in a collective and very inclusive manner.
Thank you, Marion. Now, just to conclude the technical recommendation, I would like to talk about architecture. And let's go further with Rennes. So a question for Simon. Rennes has different kind of data, and since these different kind of data are reused in your platform, why do you have chosen a federated architecture, and why is it particularly relevant in your case, please?
Yes, thank you. We have many different data providers, data producers, as we call them, and they are very diversified. We have big players, like Marion just said, the national institutions that provide data, and we are interested in the local part of these big data sets. And we also have much smaller players, NGOs, local research labs, and very diversified entities. And what we need to do is to find a framework where they can all share data, all while remaining in control of how it's managed and who has access to their data. We think it's very important, and we think we have a stronger commitment by these providers when they remain in charge of their data, and we think they will be more willing to join if this doesn't mean that they lose control. And so this is probably more of a governance issue than a technical one. And also another thing is that outside of that, we don't want to centralize the data in one place for also other reasons, and one of them being not duplicating, replicating data for environmental reason. That's one reason, but also because getting the data from the source is always the fresher source, and you just need to you have the best data when you get it directly from the provider's system. So a federated architecture allows us to build a more interesting and more complete governance framework. Actually, now we can start working on the rules. What does it imply when you become a data provider that's connected to the federation? What are your rights and your obligations and everything? And it's a better framework for discussion when you don't have to take control over the systems of the providers. I hope that that's clear.
Yes, very clear. Thank you, Simon. And let's have another point of view. So, Sean, could you explain us how you did choose your architecture model for Up42?
All right. So yeah, for us, it's pretty much, I think similar drivers that Simon was just explaining. It's really important for partners to feel comfortable that you're going to be looking after their products, that you're not only technically, but also from a commercial perspective. I think a big problem in geospatial and in Earth observation in particular is that there are a lot of use case restrictions and a lot of fears that if you lose control of your data product, then you're going to lose revenue streams and other channels. So a lot of our architecture was driven by feedback from partners on what would make them comfortable to bring their products into our marketplace. So that was on the one side. The second part of it was, as we already spoke about earlier, we needed two things to happen. We needed to be able to bring in data from lots of different providers at the same time without necessarily copying any of the data. And of course, our data architecture really was driven from that decision. And then the second part was in terms of how we're dealing with algorithms, etc., was really about, okay, how can we scale up to be able to do lots of processing in parallel, which led us to a Kubernetes and Docker-driven architecture for the processing side. What's really important here as well is that when you're taking an architectural model which relies on you bringing the data into your system or close to your system, what you don't want to necessarily do is copy too much data. There's a lot of expense in moving data from one cloud provider to another cloud provider, especially when you're crossing regions, etc. So our overall architecture allows us to, over time, more and more start ramping up the processing work where the data already resides. And this is also a very big benefit from a latency and cost efficiency perspective.
Thank you, Sean. And now we are at the last part of my questions. And let's address the topic of economic sustainability to finish. For each panelist, I will have just one question. What are the main best practices of your ecosystem that ensure the anti-fragility of your ecosystem? And first, Marion, can you tell us something about that?
Yes, this is a very tough question. If we had the solution, maybe everybody around this table would be very happy. The thing that I can say is that we're really working on that. It is really part of our attempt to understand the whole governance of such a data sharing platform. And well, this something which is very important, and I think the exchanges we had today is really highlighting this, is that we can see that the question of data sharing or the uses of data for the most wide publics is a technical process, but it's also a governance process. And in our project Rudy, we really we try to address both these questions in a very integrated way. And for instance, we have a whole work package on governance, and it means what are the rules. I was very much interested in what Théo-Paul said about the times they spent on defining common rules for data sharing in the agricultural field. And this is quite the same problem for us. We have really we really have to spend a lot of time on these governance aspects, but we'll link very tightly the economical aspects to this decisional aspect of what are the rules we give us to share the data of a local territory like Rennes Métropole. And the hypothesis we made is that if we want to imply all sorts of publics, all sorts of stakeholders in the governance of a platform for sharing data, we have to imply them also on an economical basis. And there are a lot of questions around this. The only thing I can say, we have no solution, but we have pointed that problem as a major aspect of our project, and we are working on it very concretely with the data holders, with the producers, with the data users, with the citizens, and inside the governance of the local actor that is Rennes Métropole. And well, this is a long path to go. I'm just not sure that we'll have operational solutions replicable for everybody at the end of the process in 3 years, but I hope we'll have in that time enlightened a little bit this question, and we'll have more clear solutions to test, and maybe not all made solutions, but maybe identified also the false good ideas that we should have elaborated in the first way. We want really to test what is possible, what is acceptable for all the stakeholders around the table. But I think I said that previously, but I really think that we are going to end with the idea that it is not the only responsibility of the public actor, but that everybody is hoping that the public actor will take his part in a legal way in the responsibility aspect of this question, but also in the economical aspect of this question. So let's see. And we will really be happy to share the results of this project on this point, which is the governance point, and especially the economical aspect of this question.
Thank you, Marion. So same question for Dan, and perhaps you already told that, but we thought it was a really good practice. So which technological choice are your main sustainability assets in the logistic and tracking ecosystem, Dan?
Yes. You can still hear me, yeah? Okay. Yeah, so let's work backwards from our customers. So our customers are in the maritime industry, and I'm sticking to the AIS example. So our customers in the maritime industry, this is a very cost-conscious industry. They want valuable data at the lowest possible cost point. So we and the rest of the chain, working backwards, we need to be able to deliver that data at the lowest possible price point and, of course, cost point to us. So for us, obviously, being let's call it a space-based company, one of the most important factors in bringing down the cost of our operations is, of course, the use of the CubeSat technology, of the nanosatellite technology. It allows us to launch sensors into space. The sensors are, of course, the ones that actually generate the revenue, let's put it that way. But it allows us to launch sensors into space at a cost point that is orders of magnitude lower than let's call it traditional spacecraft, which then allows us to obviously put more effort into the amount of money that goes into cloud-based services, generating the right APIs for our customers, improving the quality of the data, rather than putting all that money into a large spacecraft. So obviously the CubeSat or nanosatellite platform is an important technological element to ensure that we deliver to our customers the best data at the lowest possible price point. And as I said before as well, another important technology is the use of cloud services. And as some of my other colleagues have already said, also the ability to deliver that data using API, so we take away the human in the middle, and therefore reduce also those cost elements. So I would say those nanosatellite technology, which by the way also reduces the price of launching those satellites into space. So nanosatellite technology, cloud-based service, cloud technology, and API technology, those are fundamental elements to ensuring that we serve our customers at a price point that they're able to say, okay, bring it on. Give me some of that.
Thank you, Dan. So I will ask always the same question to Sean. What are the key factors, let's say, for Up42 sustainability?
So I think on the one side, the key factor for us is being able to form long-lasting partnerships with our suppliers, both on the data provider side and the algorithm side. Of course, it takes a long time for us to build up an ecosystem of users, right? And of course, we need to have the data providers and the algorithm providers on board long enough and have patience while we're busy building this up over time for it to be sustainable. So I think this is the one thing. I think, you know, ecosystems take time. The return on investment doesn't come immediately, and I think this is just something that needs to be more or less accepted. The other key thing for us is that, of course, in the Earth observation industry in particular, there is a lot of new data sources coming online in the next couple of years, huge numbers of constellations and satellite launches. And of course, if we're able to get access to these data sources via API, via good data platforms, then we can obviously help to build our ecosystem faster and make it more sustainable. And the final thing is, and this is a real key one, you know, we have to make sure that we don't breach the trust of our data providers. We try to do this by being as transparent as possible about where we are, by providing real-time access to reports which show how the products are being used of our partners in more or less real time, but at the same time recognizing the privacy of our customers and making sure that the data is segregated and anonymized enough so that we're not leaking any customer information or providing sort of you know, competitors with potential information about each other that would you know, give them an unfair advantage. So we've got to be transparent, but we've also got to be careful around you know, security of data.
Thank you very much, Sean. Now it's time for Théo-Paul to explain us the key success factor for the sustainability of api-agro and Data Hub. Théo-Paul, please.
Yes. A lot have been said already. I think when you are talking about ecosystems, you have to have both providers and users. On the api-agro platform, nowadays we are something like 1,000 users. So our main issue is rather to have providers, to make them accept to share the data in this common framework with all the guidelines that have been promoted in the ecosystems with everyone. Yeah, the goal of the platform also, I think, what we build, it's really a vertical platform. So the study was about geographical data. We have some in our platform, not only, but we have some. And people expect to find every data about agriculture on our platform. And that's why we have also open data to commercial data. You can find all type of data on our platform. And I think this is something that users expect when they come to our platforms, really, is to find all the data they need in the ecosystem. That's why also we support them. Like if you don't find the data you need, just give us an email and we will look for you the right providers to onboard them on the platform and allow you to access the data you need to develop your services. I think this is something important. We talk a lot about pedagogy, but it's also about supporting the ecosystem with services they may need about where can I find the right data, how can you bring the right provider for me. We're also something we have not talked about a lot. It's about standardization of the data. I think, for example, with App42, they standardize the way to access to the data for all their providers. Say, okay, we allow you to access through us to all the data, and they have standardized how to access to the data. This is something important, but also how when you are talking about the same kind of data, for example, in agriculture, when you are talking about plots, when you are talking about herd, about milking performance, you have to have standardization, you have standards to allow to access the same way to the data to any providers. And I think this is something important, and this is some challenges we are facing in our ecosystem, for example. Something important also, it's about the trust. It has been told, if you have no trust in the system, in the value chain, you don't have any data exchange. Because if the providers don't trust the data, your system and your tools to secure data exchange, it won't come on the platform to expose. And if your users don't trust your providers, for example, they won't use your platform because they don't see the value of the data. They think the data has no value if they don't have trust in the data. And I think this is all we are working of the challenges we are working on to develop a sustainability platform and sustainability tools. The last thing was about the consent of the farmers. Farmers' data are considered highly with high privacy. Same for medical data. We do a lot of comparison with medical data in agricultural sectors, and we're working a lot about the consent of the farms, which are not personal data, but company data. So we're not talking about GDPR, but we're talking about what are the common frameworks that the whole sector have to establish to get this trust.
Thank you, Théo-Paul. Now, Rink, do you have any best practice to share with us to conclude on your part?
Yes, I do. Thank you. In fact, the economic system sustainability, well, the emergency services are often not paid for their services, but the prices, of course, the money is gained for the damage that is avoided. But the sustainability of the ecosystem lies within the use, the amount of time and lives and damage they save by participating in the ecosystem. And it's also about trust, but they need to gain something. I mean, they also say sometimes if the system is not really addressing our daily issues, then we are not going to use the system. So the system is not going, doesn't have to be some kind of theoretically developed system, but needs to be a practical one. This is in fact the most important message, and that makes all stakeholders collaborate, both the users and the data providers, because I have also learned that the data providers become very enthusiastic by participating in an ecosystem, because they know, okay, how is my data used and how can I improve the data that I provide? And they even start providing new data. So this is a win-win situation for both sides of in the ecosystem, the providers and the eaters of the food in the ecosystem. So I think this is also some good issue from the biological point of view of ecosystems.
Yes, thank you, Rink. And now to conclude this panel, I would like to ask the same question again and again to Daniel. So Daniel, what are the success factors, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, we already hear it a lot, but I want to try to give a different perspective here. For me, sustainability means that we transfer from artificial demand to real demand of the industry. If you look into the geospatial industry, it's heavily driven by governmental contracts and by research. And we have to change this. I haven't seen any great B2C Earth observation application so far. Just think about this. There is no really application which everyone is using outside, which is based on classifications of satellite images, except the typical map services, right? And this is caused, I think, by the data access. We talked a lot about this today, like the APIs, because what does it mean actually to create the real demand? You need scalable products. We had the fact already that you need to build products which can scale without humans in the equation, because this is slowing down the speed and is increasing the cost. And I think we have to stimulate like technical solutions to enable this regarding the access. Then with the automatization, prices will drop for products, and then more people can benefit actually from geospatial products. And we've heard the citizens, right? But for them, just imagine they want to monitor their garden. It's impossible if you don't have a very minimal transaction size. Then the second thing, what I want to say is that we are, I think in the next 2 years, we are progressing that satellite data and satellite imagery is like becoming a commodity. And I think that through platforms such as UP42, also the basic analytics, image classifications, going to be a commodity in around 5 years from now on. But now again, think from the user perspective. The classification on a satellite imagery is still not a product. It's just a step in the entire value chain to deliver a product. And to build those products, there are a lot of more steps and we have to take. So I think, and this is also how we are using UP42, we are using it for data access so far, because this is the biggest challenge right now. But we see also that if there would be, for example, a better tree detection algorithm than our own algorithms, we would utilize this, because then we don't have to spend the resources. So just imagine an ecosystem where we solve the data access, where we have a lot of companies competing for the best algorithms for detecting cars, detecting trees. Then the real product development starts. And then with those products, we will create a real demand. And then we have a sustainable ecosystem. And I think we're going to reach that in the next 10 years.
I hope you're right. So thanks a lot. It's the end of this panel. I would like to thank a lot my panelists. Thanks. And now I will give the floor to Sébastien. He will elaborate on the recommendation that you didn't illustrate, but you already illustrated a lot of them, so thank you. And so now is Sébastien.
So as we are... Okay. No. Another try? No. Okay, it should work. Yes. Hello. Our purpose in few minutes is to bring a more transversal insights about the implication for spatial data infrastructures. So our first remark is about the vision of the ecosystem brought by our methodology. And to answer questions that we saw on the chat, the first idea is to have a tool, a modeling tool that is able to be used later on by SDI managers or workers to be appropriated when and used to model their own ecosystem. Concerning the main question, it is the role actually of SDI pertaining to the orchestration of an ecosystem. So the first and the most important is the role of standardization, which for most of the aspects is run for now a long time. We have a large body of research. What is brought by our study is the importance of the standardization of personal data that are based on, for example, GDPR and consent modules, and also to make to cover also the company's data that can be released through private data release. And actually, the same stands for crowdsourcing or volunteer geographic information. So the question for SDI there is how they may contribute to make this data collection sustainable. And there we had an example from another ecosystem. We did not study in this, but which brought interesting insights. It's about the weather data ecosystem in the United States. And the National Meteorological Agency created an application to supervise and the data collection from citizens. So, and what is interesting is it can be done this way in a professional way. This data may be compared later on with what we call authoritative data. And also, it is showing that public good is a driver sufficient enough to ensure the sustainability of data collection for crowdsourcing. And in our index cases, you have the case of Wiid also, which is kind of based on the same idea. Again, you have the case of data cooperatives, which can be understood as a crossroad, at the crossroad between personal data and crowdsourced data. And then again, SDIs have to position themselves, whether either to integrate some features of data cooperative, to influence and to advise the development of this cooperative, and also to reuse their outputs. So there we have another example from an ecosystem about healthcare with an application named My Data. So I cannot elaborate too much, but you can easily find it in internet. So to summarize this, SDI needs to foster the standardization of spatial data across the data lifecycle, not only the initial data collection, to encourage the adoption of standards for new kinds of data, especially with personal data, and and this is linked actually to the data literacy issue, because they have a huge role of orchestration to spread the knowledge in the ecosystem. A more general question is how the roles may be shared between stakeholders concerning data production. So you have actually a kind of tension in the European Union model between open data, let's say open data, open access, fair data models, which can at the same time stimulate an ecosystem, a data ecosystem, and represent, depending on the perspective and the context, a kind of hindrance to hinder the development of commercial offers. So it's always very case specific, technology specific. Then we have a remark about the incentives to release the data by private actors. We have already mentioned several times the GDPR mechanism, so I don't insist on that, but you had also some thoughts about private, how to say, data having a public value, but privately held. And it occurred also during the discussion about the high value data set. And what our use cases are showing is also the strong incentive that represents a business perspective and profitable business perspective, at least so for the data that are commercially distributed. Again, we should insist more on the data, on the knowledge, exchanges in the ecosystem. So we will just highlight, as mentioned by Mrs. Glatron, the data literacy, which actually it is aiming at aligning the cognitive representation of the ecosystem, but also the knowledge about the standards, the data models, the outputs of the ecosystem. And it is also envisioned in the European data strategy that Mr. Kotsev will mention in a few moments. And to conclude and to elaborate on the remark made by Mr. Haezebrouck, you have the deep meaning of what means of orchestrating for a data ecosystem. So we have to know that data orchestration was designed for very specific platforms such as Apple, Google, or industries such as computers like IBM models. For a data ecosystem, what is important is not the idea of governing an ecosystem, but influencing an ecosystem and orienting it in a sustainable direction. And as there are a lot of actors that are not all well integrated, we suggest the concept of a distributed orchestration, which means this orchestration function will be shared by different stakeholders across the ecosystem. So for the SDI, it will be more about the data provision, but it should know, of course, the downstream activities. So this perspective of distributed orchestrations is also meaning that these actors have to be aware first of their role in the ecosystem. And also that this kind of orchestration is more subtle, maybe more balanced than in a manufacturing ecosystem, but it's also actually even more complex to implement, of course. Thank you.
Alex, please.
Yes, thanks, colleagues. It is my turn now. Very quickly. First of all, I would like to once again thank all the panelists for the outstanding work. This was really insightful, and so many good examples, so much food for thought, which I think also confirms the overall approach that we undertook together with colleagues from LIST to really zoom into real working examples of mature and sustainable ecosystems so that we can learn from that. To all of our attendees today, you saw the recommendations. They were shared already with you, but you will also receive a little bit more substance in the deliverable that actually talks about, gives a more comprehensive overview of the different recommendations, argues what are the outstanding barriers, and then also makes a link to the actual good practices, a lot of which we already heard together today. I would like to conclude by mentioning that actually now it would be the moment to really think of the uptake of those kind of recommendations. So we need to move on from the linear approach in which spatial data infrastructures were conceptualized many years ago to this more agile, more flexible manner that many of our distinguished panelists mentioned today. We need to also, I think, make sure that all the actors participate in the process, to have an inclusive process, because if we don't really include them, then the whole initiative is not going to be sustainable. We need to educate. Clearly, external stakeholders, users quite often do not know how to use the data. We need to build trust. I think I heard a lot from many of you about the trust, which we need to be working on. Then on the technical side of things, we heard APIs, standards, but also I really liked what Dan and to an extent Sean also mentioned, that data has no value if it does not actually reach the user. We can do whatever fancy technical solution, architecture, etc., but it makes very little sense if we don't do that. And then finally, from Theo, real demand. Yes, this is what it's all about. If we have a project which by definition is a time-boxed activity, everything works. We need to move on beyond that, and we need to work on the real demand. And I think we have a real demand on multiple levels. Look at what the slide now mentions. I don't want to go into the detail, but what we're discussing today is so close to the heart of on the political agenda of the Commission, and we have all of those initiatives: the European Strategy for Data, White Paper on AI, the Open Data Directive, support through the Digital Europe program, establishment of sector-specific data spaces, one on the Green Deal, but also others that are sector-specific. So the political context is there, but clearly, I think, as was mentioned today, alone, no single stakeholder or user can achieve too much. So we are in the same boat together. Users, providers, the national level, also the European level. And with that, I think I would like to stop because we are out of time. But thanks again to all for the lively discussion and for the outstanding work. Last but not least, thanks to the colleagues from LIST for the really remarkable job that they have done.